Welcome to Jetpack by Instant Housecall Episode 6. I'm your host, Jeff Alish. If you're looking for remote support software, try it free at instanthousecall.com or click the logo to the right of the video. If you guys could do me a favor, join the chat now at itjetpack.com to share ideas with other techs and business owners during the show. You'll find the chat beneath the live video and the orange tab at the right of your screen. All of us know the mushy middle. It's when you get enough business to keep yourself and maybe a handful of staff going at full speed, but not enough capacity to free your hands to actually focus on growing your business. We've all heard you want to work on your business, not in your business. If you want to scale, how do you do that when you're busy and you can't afford to hire someone? You need to streamline that, and that means processes in the back office. Collections and billing aren't glamorous or fun, but if you want to grow, you need to smooth out the back office so you can focus on the stuff that brings in revenue. What do you do when you're not driving enough business to hire someone to take care of that? We're going to find out. Joining us today, we have Lori Tishney from Computer Concepts USA. Lori runs a break-fix shop and also offers training in the back office. We also have Sean Jennings from CIM Solutions, a managed service provider focused on business-to-business. And we have Dave Greenbaum from Dr. Dave Computer Repair, a break-fix shop from Lawrence, Kansas, and Corey Fruitman from Instant Housecall. We'll get back to the back office in a bit, but first let's talk about the mushy middle. What is it and how do you get rid of it? When I first read this sentence, I thought about it and I said, well, you exercise to get rid of the mushy middle, but I don't think that's what we're talking about today. Corey, go ahead and describe what the mushy middle means for your business.
It means a lot of challenges, and so for me, I'm very firmly in that mushy middle where I want to do a bunch of things. There's a whole bunch of things I'm trying to do, but like for example, just on Friday, I ran into this situation where I was in the middle of doing some work, and all of a sudden my server said that it was out of disk space, and it showed that it had 80% free. And it turned out that there was something that was clogging up the inodes, and I spent 4 hours of that day, instead of doing real work, cleaning up these extra files that were sitting on the server. And so if I was out of the mushy middle, I'd have a sysadmin who could take care of that. But I just don't have enough capacity. I don't have enough need to have a full-time sysadmin. And when things like that happen, I don't have the ability to get someone quickly enough to fix it. So for me, that's the mushy middle.
Okay, that's interesting. So basically what you're saying is you are doing everything yourself when you really need to somehow get somebody to take care of some of those tasks that you probably don't need to be dealing with on a daily basis.
I don't do everything myself. So I do have programmers, and Rachel, who you've met before, she helps with marketing. I've got people doing certain pieces that that I can delegate. But when there's something that comes up either unexpectedly or a new project or whatever, I just don't have the capacity to grow like that. And it's a frustration that I have, and I think a frustration a lot of small businesses have.
Okay. Lori, from a break-fix model, what does a mushy middle mean to you?
Not having enough time in the day to actually get the work done. A lot of times people will call me and they want their problem fixed that day, and sometimes I may already be booked with clients that day, and I could have one of my other two techs working with me as well, but we're already booked. So having someone to be available to go and grab a computer or talk to somebody on the phone, returning those phone calls, I just don't have enough time in the day, enough free time to actually run the business. So I seem to jump from one thing to the next, right, and I don't have enough time to complete anything to the best of my ability.
Gotcha. Now, Sean, you're kind of on the other end of that, doing as a managed service provider. I'm sure that you've kind of moved past the mushy middle yourself. But what kind of growing pains did you go through to get to that point where you could actually get enough staff to take care of the everyday needs of your business?
So for us, as we grew, the biggest thing was, do you wait so that you're so overloaded and you're not meeting your SLAs to then bring on another tech, or are you able to look and say, okay, if we continue to grow at this pace, we're going to need another technician come next quarter, so let's start the hiring process now. Currently, our time to find a level 1 or level 2 tech is about 3 to 6 months. So we need to plan and know that we're going to need an additional tech 1 to 2 quarters before we actually need that additional tech, because you don't want your customer's service level to drop so that you start to lose customers while you're trying to bring on another technician.
That makes sense. Yeah.
It's that planning, and that honestly, I think a lot of it is crossing your fingers that, okay, yeah, if things continue, if we add so many new clients per month, then therefore come November we'll need another tech, so let's look now, let's get them up to speed 1 to 2 months ahead. We're sort of still in the mushy middle, but on the outer edge of it, where we still have issues, that there are still a couple tasks that I hold on to that I desperately want to get rid of, and that's our goal for the end of this year, is to finally let me focus on the things that I really like to do.
So it's one of those things where you really have to keep a pulse on your business in what direction it's going in order to be proactive, to get to that point where you go, hey, I'm going to need somebody in 3 to 6 months, and we need to start this process now, instead of waiting till the time when you're so overwhelmed. And that's the last thing that you can do in your business, is actually take the time to find somebody to fill that that spot.
Correct.
Okay.
Part of that is over the last few years doing as much as we can to transition to a true managed service provider model, so that it's not, well, will the phones be busy today or won't they? It's, okay, we're going to bring on 2 new managed clients. That'll be an extra 100 or 200 devices to manage. So once you hit that true MSP model, you can plan much more better than just sitting there going, oh my God, the phones are ringing off the hook, we need an extra tech.
Gotcha. All right, and Dave, now are you doing a lot of the stuff in your business yourself, or are you able to segment some of that stuff in your business?
That's really where we've been going. I'm doing much less service calls and much more managing the business. I still primarily answer the phones, do the scheduling, but then I have a team that actually does the service calls, and then when there's problems with a client or they need extra support, that's where I can fill in.
Gotcha. Now, is there a reason that you're, in this particular case, is there a reason that you're still the face of the phone calls?
So that way I know what's going on and maintain control.
Okay. So yeah, it's hard for a lot of us in this business to let go of certain things, because a lot of us will think, hey, nobody can do it better than I can. I know I feel that way in a lot of areas, because I've seen other techs and I go, yeah, okay, you're not doing this because, yeah, you can't figure it out, I can. So, but I think you have to get to a point where you find people that can fill your shoes. And I think what Sean had said, level 1, level 2 techs is different than trying to get somebody that's got the experience that, any of you people have on this panel.
It's also that when somebody is able to specialize in something and focus on it 100% of the time, even if they don't start out better than you, they will become better than you for sure. Like, I know in my case, I had a lot of trouble, really a lot of trouble handing my source code off to other people, and that was a serious challenge. And you have fears that they're going to steal it or whatever, and I didn't think they'd understand it or be able to get up to speed. What I found out very quickly was they're much better at it than I am. They're able to focus on it 100% of the time. They're not getting those phone calls that are interrupting them when you're in the middle of a thought. So.
Okay.
One of the issues, Jeff, that I have is that I live in a smaller community, or 2 communities that I do a lot of networking in, and I've been in this community for 17, 18 years, and people don't want to work with somebody else that I've brought on. Even if I feel that they would be better for a particular job, they're used to working with me, they're used to how I solve problems, and sometimes it's a social aspect. They know me socially from around town, or I've known them for over the years from different networking events, and they want me to come out to solve their problem and not someone else that's a part of my team to come out.
And so how do you solve that problem? Because I think we all run into that, where people will say that have used us for years, and they'll go, no, I want you because I trust you, I know you. How do we get past that point of getting away from this mushy middle and going, no, I really need to outsource certain things in my business?
I just say that I'm booked. I can't do it until next week, and if you want it solved today, I can have, this person help you today, but otherwise I don't have time in my schedule to do it until next week.
I think that's a great way to handle that, because you're not saying no. What you're saying is, I can be available, it's just not going to be anytime soon, and so if you want this problem solved now, here's what you get. And I think a lot of people, when it comes down, even though they like us and they want to use us for what they've used us for years, I think a lot of people will still, they want their product fixed. They want their electronic thing fixed or their computer or whatever it is. And so they will do an analysis in their head, I think, and go, okay, this is okay. And then if you're hiring the right people, I think that those people can have that same type of relationship with that person. Now, how do you guys deal with, obviously you're not the face of everything. I mean, do you keep in contact with your customers? Is there a way that you still keep that contact open because you've been working with them for so many years?
So for us, if it's a new customer that isn't at a critical point, so that a server's not down or something like that, I'm always that first point of contact. Go out, meet with the customer, discuss our company, get a tour of their facility. I then make the additional notes that will then go into our system so that the text, maybe there's pictures of their server room, things like that. Any customers of ours that become regular customers then will get either a quarterly or a 6-month or a yearly visit. And I'm the one, if they're a really technical customer, I'll take one of our technicians. But it keeps my face there that they understand that, this is the guy that's in charge. So if the crap hits the fan and there's something critical that needs to be escalated, you're not stuck dealing with Bob the technician. And it works good. It still has the things where if something really goes sideways, then they're still reaching out to me. But what we did years ago is the same thing. If you're calling asking for Greg or you're calling asking for Sean, I'm sorry I can see you next week, but, Matt will be more than happy to take care of you right now. And because we live answer our phones, they call, they get a technician. It really has to be something severe or a large project to get escalated up the chain instantly.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a great answer to that. Dave, what are some of your current challenges, and how are you overcoming those challenges, or how are you looking ahead to overcome those challenges, and change what you're doing in your business?
Sure. I think probably the biggest challenge we had is, like Lori said, and I think Sean said to an extent, hiring. And you can't bring someone on board till you have the business, and you can't have the business until you bring someone on board. So right. that to me is the mushy middle. And then, it takes us about 3 or 4 months to hire someone. And then if we're busy, I don't have time to do the interviewing. And then they're on board, and then there's a sudden decline in the amount of billable hours per technician because we brought another team member on board. So there's also been situations where I know of someone that is available to work, and I have to say I don't have the business for you right now. So it's tough. It's absolutely tough. So then it falls back on me doing more service calls, stuff like that.
So how do you mentally make the break from going, we're gonna go through some growing pains when we're hiring somebody on to help us out in an area? How do you get past that where you go, here's what we're gonna do, and we know it's gonna be painful, and we know it's not gonna be fun, and there might be a little bit of loss in revenue. How do you push past that?
Good question. I haven't quite figured that out yet. I think the fact that I try to stay behind the scenes more, so that way I can be a floater and be flexible either on the phones, hiring, everything from being the the IT person at my own company to the dispatcher to the hiring manager, all these roles, and just having to shift in between. But it's definitely it is hard. Unless you have a big corporation with a HR person and accounting. Right. Oh yeah, and I forgot we also do the accounting. So there's a lot there.
Right. So Lori, how do you do that? And maybe that's a good point too, talking about things like accounting. Obviously, we probably are our own worst bookkeeper, and we probably should. That should be one of the first things I think that should be hired out. But Lori, what do you say to that as far as going through that mental challenge, moving on to getting out of the mushy middle and going, hey, how do I know it's going to be painful, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyways?
Well, one of the things that I've started doing when I get really busy, when a lot of people are calling all in one day and I just don't have enough time in the day to do all the work, I've started outsourcing to other local computer companies that we have a partnership with, so I get a little bit of a discounted rate on their hourly rate, but I'm able to bring them the work that either I don't have time to do or I don't have the time to focus on, or it's something just I personally don't have in my wheelhouse. If it's, replacing a screen, that's not what I do, but I can outsource it to another company that does do that. So that's something that I've been doing in this last year just to try to keep up. And I do have part-time people that work with me, but they're not always available on the days that everybody's calling with a problem, or I need to solve it faster than when they're available. So it's something that I've been trying to do to help me in this interim before I really, take the plunge to grow a little bit more. But that's a scary thing too.
Okay, great. And Sean, how about you? I mean, obviously you had to make a mental switch, and I know you kind of briefly touched on it, but how do you tell people to get past that point of, hey, we're just going to dive in, we're going to do this no matter what happens, and we're going to be better off for it in the end?
For the last probably 3 years, a lot of it is being the gamble. It has to make sense. You don't go out and say, we're keeping everyone at 50% load. Let's go out and hire a senior guy for $100,000 a year because maybe we'll get a contract. But typically with us, people come on as level 1, level 2s, and then they come up. About 2 hiring rounds ago, we were looking for 1 person. We found 2, but we looked at it and said, okay, it'll be some lost profit for the next 3 to 6 months, but if everything keeps going the way that we're going, we don't want to miss, we don't want to lose the potential for this one amazing candidate just because we only wanted to hire 1. So we took a gamble, we hired 2, and within 6 months we were then hiring an additional 1. So it really is knowing your business. You have to get to the point where things are a little bit more steady, and okay, on past history, we had 2 new customers a month. This is the load. We're currently at a 60% utilization. So let's go on and bring someone on. Big thing that we're doing this year is sort of a reshuffling of roles, promoting sort of the level 4 guy up. Now you're in charge of running the service department instead of our technical director. So it's, we've been good for us in that things are pretty consistent. On average, we will add X amount new customers per month or per quarter, but it really comes down to that gamble. Another thing, how Lori's talking about customers call me, they want it now. Something we learned, years ago was you get to a point where you have to start to reset your customers' expectations for what you charge them. If they're on a basic 48-hour SLA, if every time they call in you drop everything and you rush to help them, add a new user or fix a printer, it becomes really difficult later on to say to them, okay, you're paying for this, yet we're giving you this, and you will have some that will say, well, I'm going to leave you because you're not giving me the same level of service. Well, we are our worst enemy. The better you get at your job, if you're in a break-fix model, the less money you're going to make. And that's the greatest thing with that MSP model, is that the better you are at your job, finally, the more money you'll make. And it was something probably about 6 to 7 years ago we said, we got to stop. It's almost like you do a server rollout in 2 hours and the customer says, well, you quoted me 2 days. I'm not going to pay you for 2 days. You did it in 2 hours. Well, it's because you use your own tools. You have special processes. So it's, how do you stop getting so good at your job that you're actually, you're improving yourself into bankruptcy, basically.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's hard to get past that. Corey, so now you've kind of grown your business and scaled back a little bit. Kind of tell a little bit about what that meant for you, and because obviously you want to move your business ahead. You've already talked about your mushy middle. What do what types of things have you gone through, and how are you combating that now?
In terms of combating it now, I'm trying to figure that out myself. But in terms of what I've done in the past, I've done what Sean did, which is you sort of do something in anticipation of, and you scale up, and you hope that gets filled. So about 2 years ago, I had 10 or 11 guys, and it was, and I was making a little bit more money, but not enough to justify the headaches. Is the truth. and so scaled right back. And so now I'm sort of up against that wall again, where I can't grow my sales like the way I'd like to, without having someone take that load off. And at the same time, I don't want in order to do that, I need to hire a sysadmin to handle what happened on Friday, and a web designer to help out with Jetpack, and so I don't know where to start. And so I like I said, I tried it once and I had to kind of fall back a little bit. And so I'm kind of at that point now where my hands are completely tied, and I don't know what the answer is.
Well, I'll say, because I think we all go through this in our business, and I'll say, number one, make a list. Number two, prioritize the list. I know it sounds so simple, but because sometimes I don't know. I know how most techs or most business owners, our minds, our brains are all over the place. And I have a hard time focusing and dialing in. And so in order to get some things done in my own personal business, because I'm a one-man band, I had to basically go and start creating a list and go, here's the priorities, and these are the things I'm going to deal with. And I'm seriously looking at outsourcing some of these things that are like, I don't want to call them mundane tasks, but updating things on my website is kind of a mundane task, and I really don't care to do. So I want to move that forward. I can give somebody else the information, hey, put it in there, make it look pretty, and go from there. Part of the problem is, though, when you talk about things like websites and stuff like that, we have this artistic eye that we go, this website looks exactly how I want it to look. And what I keep trying to explain to people, your customer doesn't care. They care that it's neat and clean, and they want a contact form or phone number to get a hold of you. That's about it. Nobody except us techs are digging down into other people's websites. So I think there's a lot that goes to that. But it's tough because, again, when I know I can do something, I want to do it, because I know I can figure it out, but do I really need to spend the time figuring that out? And I don't think that we need to.
I agree, but there's a huge challenge there. So I went through this recently as well. So now you have to go find a web person. You got to find someone you like, and someone who's actually, like with graphic designers, they're often not the most reliable.
That's a good point. And yeah, you're spending a lot of time trying to find that person to fix it at this point. And I think, with what Sean was saying earlier, having that kind of proactive look and going, hey, we're not going to get this done today, but 6 months down the road we can set something up and get somebody in there that I'm comfortable with. The problem is we're in an instant microwave society. We want everything yesterday. People will spend $2 more to get their frozen pizza done 30 seconds earlier. Lori, what's some of the, now obviously you've had hurdles in your business. What are some of the things obviously you've also had some successes. What have you done in your business to kind of get past some of the hurdles and get onto those successes in your particular business?
Well, on the other side of my business, in terms of the training business, where we go to corporate clients and do training, I've been able to duplicate myself. I have other trainers that I've worked with in the industry that we're able to duplicate a model, but I think it's an easier process to duplicate because you're doing the same thing every day, maybe different clients, but it's not like the break-fix model where you don't know what you're going to have every day. So it's very difficult, I think, to find an employee that can help you, have a wide breadth of knowledge, to go in and do some of the tech support stuff. So I'm successful on the training side, but finding the right person on the tech side has been difficult for me.
Okay.
Just having that breadth of knowledge. But on the training side, I'm able to duplicate myself with other trainers that have, the skills necessary to teach the classes that they go out and train on. But in terms of the technical side, having someone that can do all the different things that we do with the different clients is sometimes difficult to do.
Sean, so obviously you're doing some of these things where you basically you've duplicated yourself, so to speak, whether it's from the beginning levels and moving on up from there. But how did you do that in your business and make it successful to where it works for you? What's kind of your hiring process and different things, or what are you looking for? And obviously, a lot of times we'll look at somebody, in my opinion, and it's like it's not us. So how do we get to that point where we go, but this is I'd say it like this, but this is good enough to move my business forward?
So years ago when hiring, we'd go through the whole monster thing, and post the ad, and we even started to create a whole questionnaire, an online exam, and we'd have a job posting and get 800, 1,500 applicants, and you'd just be looking at going, I don't have time for this. So then at least the online exam would then whittle that down to the people that could actually had some knowledge. After that, because it was burning so much time, the last 4 to 5 years, we've just switched to using an agency. So here's what we want. We leave it up to you. It costs us a crap load of money, but it lets us focus on our business, and they come to us with 1, 2, 3 candidates. We then look at them and we either do or don't interview them, or tell them to go back and say, here, tweak it this is what these people are missing. Using an agency it's a big investment, but it means that we can continue to run our business as opposed to deal with interviewing people and chatting with people on the phone. We haven't quite decided, with this round, we've had it out at an agency. We may actually use an online service that someone pointed to that they've had great success with. So we're looking at potentially using that sort of an online agency. The bigger thing is realizing that, you're never, we've been in the industry 30 plus years, you're never going to find people that are as good as you, unless, of course, you're looking for that senior level guy and you want to pay him through the nose, which you can't have every tech in your company being a senior level guy.
Right.
So years ago, we used to hire for experience and knowledge, and can you pass this, and here's a problem, and what would you do? And we realized that those are the worst people that customers hated dealing with, and now we actually hire based on personality, and do we think that they can be a problem solver and learn? And those techs have been much better techs than saying, oh, look, you could answer this question and fix this. And we actually used to have in our boardroom when we would do testing, here's a server, here's a motherboard with this problem, what are you going to do to fix it? And those hardcore techie people that can do that are the worst people that your customers will want to deal with. So now it's resetting what we're looking for, and we're looking for personality and problem solving. We'll teach you, especially on the level 1 and level 2, we'll teach you the skills you need to solve the problem, keep the customer calm on the phone, and get them to the point where if it is a hardcore technical issue, that can be escalated up to a 3, 4, or a 5. And our customers love it. Now it's almost a negative where they love talking with certain techs because, oh my God, he calmed me down and this and that, and it's like, yeah, but that call wasn't supposed to be a half-hour call because you wanted to talk about what you made for dinner on the weekend. And now it's almost negative, but it's all 5 out of 5 on all the surveys because the customers love dealing with these guys. But it's like it's not a social engagement.
Right. No, that's great. Yeah, you definitely. Personality goes a long way. In the skills, I'm going to say the skills you can teach. You really can. And now, Laura, you were saying that you had a hard time finding a tech like that. Are the ones you're finding not able to learn the basics, or is it just you've got to put so much time and effort into it that it just makes it where it's not worth it?
It's not that it's not worth it. It's just sometimes I'm working with a lot of college level students that are coming to work for me, not as an intern, but just coming to work for me, and they have skills, but they don't have a lot of knowledge around a lot of the different issues that you can find when you go to the different clients, when you go to the smaller clients that are working with a lot of different programs or proprietary software, and you're trying to troubleshoot. So what Sean was saying with having someone that can be a really good problem solver, sometimes I can't find them to think outside the box to solve some of the problems that they may encounter at a client that's using a lot of proprietary stuff.
Okay. Dave, what now in your business, how are you finding techs that you're comfortable working with that can do the job for you in your business?
A lot of times people just contact us, they hear about us, but I have a very structured hiring process because at my previous job I did hiring of techs, and we do 3 different levels. And part of it is because there's 3 ways you interact with a customer: over email, over phone, and in person. So we initially do an email interview, and then we follow up with a phone interview, and then we follow up with an in-person interview. So that way we can really judge those people skills, and the questions are, there's very few technical questions, but we'll give them real life scenarios that with our customers, and we'll ask them. We don't want to see how they fix the problem. We want to hear the processes that they go through to fix the problem, and that tends to help us find really good quality people.
That's great. Yeah, that's a great tip right there. Yeah, it is a lot of times it is by the process. How are you a troubleshooter, and are you able to figure the problem out no matter what it is? And the ones that go, because I mean there's always the text that will go, I don't know. And you're like, okay, but the problem still has to be solved. So we, whether it's a workaround or whatever it is, we have to make it work. I don't know. So,
one other thing that we do is someone gave me some advice many years ago. We ask the exact same questions to every single applicant and record. As far as the phone interviews, we record them with the applicant's permission. And we'll document what we want as ideal answers. And when we find a technician that works for us, I will actually go back through those interviews with those technicians that worked out for us and revisit them, so that way when I interview the next person, I'm like, gosh, we want an answer more along these lines, because people who answer these questions tend to work out really well. Like, for example, I don't know why this is, but all the great technicians have been involved in high school sports. I don't know why, but that was one thing that I noticed was a trend during the interview. Swim team, football team, cross country, and an advisor said, well, that's probably because they're used to being with other people in a group setting.
Right. Yeah, that's true. The other thing I found out is usually people that have been in the military usually have a lot of discipline, and let's face it, not always, but most of the time, depending on what you did in the military, you have to think on your feet. It's really not a choice. So I think a lot of times, sports, military, these are just disciplines that people do, and so they can, not only the group settings, they have to work with other people because it's not a choice, but they have to do what they got to do in order to make whatever needs to be done. So that's great. Let's move into the back office, and let's talk about the back office. And Corey, why don't you tell us a little bit about how bad your back office is?
Well, if I showed you my wall that's about this thick with receipts, so that should give you some kind of an indication. It's bad. I don't know what to say. It's it's something. Same thing. I'm working too much on the business itself, and it ends up getting pushed to the back. Where it shouldn't be. There's a lot of things that I need to streamline. So I'm gonna learn just as much from everyone else on this one, because I have nothing that I can add on that.
Well, I mean, as far as what in your back office needs, immediate attention.
Everything. So just filing process. The one thing that I have very much down pat is software development. Like that process is very smooth. But in terms of even getting my taxes prepared and paying my HST, which is sales tax up here, just getting all that stuff together it's not smooth. It takes a lot of work. And even though I have a bookkeeper and yes I have an accountant, I still have to get that information to them in a digestible form. And so it's just keeping that stuff organized is a headache. I think what I need is an office manager, but that's I'll get that right after the sysadmin.
Now, as far as let's take accounting software for example. What do you use in your business that's taking so much time? Because this is something, and the reason I'm asking, this is something I'm looking at, because quite honestly, a lot of people are going to laugh. I still use an Excel spreadsheet. That's how I do. And I always will go back and find out that I have to go back 2 or 3 times because I've messed something up. Now, at the end of the year, everything gets done and it's fine, but it causes me a lot more heartache during the year. So what types of things are you using to get that to a digestible form to your accountant and bookkeeper?
It's not so much the systems as it is the irritating intricacies of stuff, and I probably don't want to get too much into this because I don't think most people are going to be able to relate to it, except maybe Chris in the chat room. But I do most of my business in U.S. dollars, but I'm Canadian, and so my Canadian customers have to pay sales tax, which comes in US dollars, and then sometimes they'll pay by check, in which case is Canadian dollars, and then all that stuff has to be organized and figured out, and I just don't have a good system for it.
Okay.
It's a nightmare.
Okay. No, that makes sense. I mean, you are dealing with a lot of different things. Especially once you're crossing the borders, you've got more things to contend with that are going to take your time. And again, it is about organization. And now you've been able to streamline your software process, development, and all that kind of thing. And it's like, how do you take what you did in the software realm and move it into this other realm? Where you can kind of move those things. But again, it's like you talked about. It's really about hiring people sometimes, and it's like, am I big enough to where I can afford that, or am I not? So, no, it makes sense. Let's talk a little bit about back office things like handling phone calls or email. And Lori, how do you handle your phone calls and email for your business?
Well, it's changed a little bit over the years, but I typically forward my phones to my cell phone if I'm going to be out of the office so that I can get that phone call. Because if someone's not in the office to answer the call, then typically I will lose that client because they'll go to the next person in the phone book, or they'll go to the next person that they found online. So last year I partnered with a company in town that they answered my phone. So I would forward my phones to them, and they would take the call and email me every time someone would call. So then I could quickly either email them to let them know I can respond to them later in the day, or I call them when I'm driving to the next client. And then this past year I've had an assistant in the office who's been answering the phone, but she's been busy a lot too, going and getting computers and picking stuff up and dropping stuff off at clients. So I'm back again where I really need to outsource that answering of the phone, because I'm losing business because we're not answering the phone.
Okay. Dave, what about you? How's your answering phone service and emails? How do you deal with that?
So I kind of have a somewhat controversial approach to my phone calls. I pretty much never pick up the phone. I let everyone go to voicemail.
Really?
And I'll tell you, at my previous job, I was primarily doing the dispatching. And what I would find out, if we responded immediately to clients, like Lori said, if you don't respond immediately, they'll go to the next person down the line. And that doesn't create a client relationship, because if that first person calls, what we would find is the company had an A in the name, so we were first in the phone book. They would call us. If we couldn't schedule right then and there, like, okay, yep, we'll be there in 15 minutes. We told them 4 or 5 hours. They would call back 15 minutes before the service call saying, you know what, I found someone who could come out here sooner, so I'm canceling, or sometimes they wouldn't even cancel. And that's not creating a relationship with the client. And by having them sometimes wait a little bit, number one is one of my pet peeves has always been technicians who don't any service person who doesn't return your phone call. It drives me bonkers.
Right.
So one way I make sure that I don't miss a call is all the calls go to Google Voice. They turn into an email, and I can manage them that way. So that way I know that I've returned every call, and I even record, with Google, the disposition of the call. Did they schedule? Do I need to follow up with them? So if your clients understand that you return calls, they don't get so stressed out about talking to an answering machine. I've tried more than once an answering service, and when they call someone, they have to explain it, and then the answering service summarizes it, and then you call them back to schedule it, and something got lost in the translation, and they get frustrated. So I found out it was a lot better. I generally try to return existing client calls within 2 hours, and new client calls within 4 hours. Usually I'm doing that between service calls, and I batch them. It's also a time management issue, because I never know how long a phone call is going to take. So a client may want to talk for 15, 20 minutes, and I've got 20 other things, and I thought it would just be a quick call. When I am working the phones, I'm sitting, I have pen and paper in front of me, I have the schedule open, so that way I can actually do the job of dispatcher. If I just answer the phone as it comes in, I may not be prepared to properly schedule or talk to that client.
And that makes a lot of sense. And I've said this often on my show, is that my best clients are the ones that have gone to voicemail. Though generally in my area, for whatever reason, a lot of clients that call, the phone and go, if they're calling, I answer the phone. A lot of times those are the clients that are just kicking the tires and they're looking for the cheapest game in town a lot of times. Not all the time. But so what I found is the people that have actually called, even new clients, and they go to voicemail, I return the call or email right away. Now, even on the email side, when I return the emails, if somebody goes to my website and goes and fills out the contact form, most of those clients never, again, I think it's once I shoot them a price, they're kind of kicking the tires, and I think that's a lot of times why they're using the contact form. But what I always tell people is it's about relationship. I want you, when you talk to me, if you feel comfortable with me and you want me to be your IT person, then that's what we're going to do. If you're not comfortable with me, you don't trust me, I don't trust you, that type of thing, then we're not a good fit anyways. You can go to the cheapest person in town that's going to be gone in 8 months. It doesn't matter. Eventually, there will be nobody left and you'll be back to me. So that's just kind of the way I look at it. But Sean, from your standpoint, how do you guys deal with it? Because obviously you've got calls probably coming in, especially for managed services, all the time wanting your attention.
So we have two ways that calls can come in. So human voice calls. One is they call our main office number. For that number, it is answered it is live answered by our office manager. She then determines, okay, is the call coming back on an existing ticket? So then she'll send it to the technician, or is it just someone calling in? Maybe they saw one of our ads, so then she'll record that and then send it into the queue, or is it someone just saying, yeah, my printer isn't working or Outlook's crashing, and then she'll send it into the queue. Those queues are then typically answered by level 1 or a level 2, and then they'll take the information, because we're not large enough to have a true dispatcher where they're creating the ticket and sending it on. They'll create the ticket. They then determine what's the problem, what level is it. They can then escalate it up to level 3, all the way to level 5. But at least it was that human interaction, so 99% of the time it doesn't go to someone's voicemail. They're able to calm the person down, no problem, can we book, let's say it's Monday, 3 o'clock today, a technician will call you back. We found that because that calms the customer down and it stops them from dialing for dollars just to see who's the cheapest, they're now relaxed. We then call them back, and they typically don't continue on going through the phone book. We know who our typical customer is, and someone that is, a solopreneur, they're not going to be a fit because they're not interested in paying a monthly fee to prevent the problem. They just want their problem fixed. So right. Occasionally we will fix their problem, and here you go, and you're on your way. For our customers that are truly customers, they have a number to call that takes them right into the technical queue so that they don't need to talk to the office manager. They don't need to explain anything. They're just right in. And I just ran a call report off of our phone system, and we don't do a lot of incoming tech type calls. Like we may do, let's see, 900. We might do maybe 50 to 100 calls a day, if that, because again, most of ours, we're a managed service provider, and we only make money if we prevent the problems as opposed to reacting to the problems. And so it's a different call. We're not getting constant calls because things are down. Chances are when the text came in the morning, they knew that something was going to be wrong with someone's machine, and they were able to either fix it in the back end or create a ticket, wait for the actual employee at the customer to then call back. A big thing, most of our customers will contact via email or via opening a support ticket. So it relieves the load from them having to talk. Because the issue with doing a telephone call is you can only be helping one person. If you're working behind the scenes and you've just taken the information and you've relaxed the customer and now you move on to helping them, you could be working on 2, 3, or 4 things at a time, as opposed to having that phone to your ear while you're dealing with one person at a time. So it's just get the information and then move on, and now start working that ticket, as opposed to doing as much telephone tech support as a lot of people tend to do.
Now, as far as the email and things like that, now do they have a spot to go to where they can do a self-service ticket where they fill in the information and then it goes into your queue?
Just a straight email into our support box will then create a ticket. response goes back to the customer. Then as soon as it's assigned to the technician, the customer gets an email back. The customer will then, or the technician will then actually, and this was a big change literally in the last 6 to 9 months, what they call sort of the closed loop ticketing, so that instead of emailing a tech by his own email address, you send it to the tech's email. Now it creates the ticket, and for people that use ConnectWise, there's the golden rule that if it's not in ConnectWise, it never really happened, and it really lets, it's covered our butt over the last few months where a customer says, that's not what I said. Well, no, here it is in the email. You said to do this, and the technician advised you to do this, and now you're saying that that's not the case, but here's the 5 emails in the chain that are all in the ticket. It makes it, as opposed to calling them back or someone, because as soon as you get information trapped in Outlook and the other techs don't know what's gone on, that's when you get to the dreaded, another tech calls back and you're saying, well, can you tell me what's going on? Well, that it pisses me off when I call into our cable provider up here and it's like, I've explained myself 3 times, I'm not going to do it again.
Right.
With everything tracked in that email through the ticket, any technician, I had a discussion with a customer this morning. First thing I did was I went to the ticket, scrolled back through 3 months worth of back and forth, and it's like, okay, the technician explained to you, this is what's wrong, you're using a piece of junk, it's old, it needs to be replaced, and here we are 3 months later and you're saying, well, why isn't it working?
Right.
The technician has explained it. You need to replace it or just give up. It's not going to work. You bought the cheapest piece of junk you could find, and it's 5 years old, and that's why it isn't working.
Great points. Lori, can you tell us a little bit about your email, and do you do self-service tickets, or it's kind of the same type of thing, or how do you handle that and keep it all organized, not only in your head but on some digital form?
Well, a lot of clients will call me. They'll sometimes text me, and then most of the time they will email me if their computer is working. But usually they have another form of their phone or their iPad, so they usually get a hold of me via email. And when it comes in, I try to respond to them as quick as possible. Usually when I'm at a client, I have some downtime while something is running or something is working, and I can let them know, something that they can try to do to try to fix something on their own first if it's an easy fix, or I'm at a client but I can call you later today and if you tell me what's wrong, I can tell you when I can get out there or try to dial into your computer later this evening or sometime the next day. So that's how I try to at least let them know. I acknowledge that they have a request. I try to give them something that they can do that's actionable on their end to fix it right away for themselves. And then if it's not something that they can fix on their own, I try to schedule an appointment with them via email.
Okay, great. And Dave, since you're anti-phone, what's your process on email, and how do you keep all that stuff straight? Do you have some sort of self-service ticket, or do you do kind of an email thing like Sean was doing?
It's more grassroots. I mean, we've looked at some of the ticket management systems, and since I don't answer the phones, everything kind of goes into Gmail because voicemails become email messages, and then I just kind of work through that. I have a goal of responding to an email within 4 hours of an existing client and 8 hours of a new client. Since I focus on primarily residential, there's not that many emergencies. I mean, they may think there are emergencies, but being a small business, I can't respond immediately. It's like calling your doctor as opposed to going to the emergency room. We're not the emergency room. So usually it's between service calls and stuff like that. I think one of the differences is going back to what I said earlier about making sure that things are responded to properly and identifying your roles. If I'm on a service call, I'm on a service call. I find that if I try to do too many things at once during the service call, something suffers. So It's when I'm done with the service call, you kind of need that downtime between clients. That's when I pull out my laptop or my phone and may respond to an email at that point. So part of it depends on how busy I am. But I find if I consistently respond immediately to emails to clients just because I have the time, then the time that I don't respond within 20 minutes, they said, well, the last time you responded in 20 minutes, now I had to wait a whole hour to get this question answered. So it's setting those customer expectations properly.
Right, that's a good point, and that's why I call nobody back quickly, and I set those expectations right up front. I'll get to you when I get to you, but that's just me, and it works for me. Anyways, so Corey, from your standpoint, though, now obviously you're selling a piece of software to help technicians out and business owners for what they do. Now, how do you handle support calls and different things like that? Is it mostly emails, or mostly phone, or what's the balance there?
Well, my customers are you guys, so you probably know your own temperaments just as well as I do. It's very rare for a tech to pick up a phone. They definitely prefer email. Some will open a ticket, some will do a forum post. If there's any sort of a technical question, it's almost always by email, which is really good for me. But there's very much an expectation that it be responded to quickly. If I leave something for 24 hours, people start getting itchy, so I tend to respond quite unlike Dave, who will let it sort of go. If I do that with my customers, they get upset. I've got to have a very quick return, and it's something we've talked about on a bunch of other shows. If you know your customer, if you're catering to a specific customer base, you know their temperaments, you know what they prefer. And so in my case, they prefer to do it electronically through some means, but they also expect a very fast response time.
Great. Okay. Good to know. All right, let's take the last 10 minutes, and we're going to talk about scheduling and billing. So, Sean, from your standpoint, how do you schedule yourself in your techs? And, what percentage of time should be billable as far as, travel time in between there and the home base? And what do you do if a tech is going to be late, early, you got traffic issues, and how do you juggle that schedule?
So the whole billable issue is something that it's a big issue we have right now, is that how do you track a tech who's successful when 80-90% of their time actually isn't billable because the customer's on a flat fee? It used to be a few years ago that you'd want 4.5 billable hours per day out of a tech, but if we're probably what 80% of our customers are all on flat fee plans, so now it's sort of the opposite of I don't want you spending all day on an issue. Escalate it as soon as you're stuck. Don't spend 2 days trying to solve a problem that, when someone else in the office or in the team knew the answer. So that's been a big sort of drive home point, is that if you don't know it, it's been 15 minutes, escalate it up, post it out, send it out on link to the other people, because the other text chances are can answer the question. So the billable is a pain point that we're now having. If a technician is going to be late for a customer, because of course, traffic happens. It rains up here, and all of a sudden it's an hour-and-a-half drive instead of a 20-minute drive. Just reach out to the customer, let them know. I don't think any customer expects you to be perfect. If you book a call and you're going to be late, just let them know. That's what they expect. You wouldn't want to. We hate it when you book someone to come to your house to service your cable or whatever, and the guy's supposed to be there at 6, and now it's 7, and you haven't heard anything. Well, that really pisses you off. So just, have the common courtesy, reach out, say, I'm running half an hour late, or maybe you just got out of a previous call or meeting and you're running late. Just, I've never had a customer get upset when you said, I just finished my previous call an hour late. Can I still come? They're happy, as long as they're happy, then happy customer tends to stay with you, whether you were later on time, as long as they knew and you kept them in the loop. Then that's my big thing, is just let them know.
Right.
When a customer emails in with a problem, yes, you may be busy, but just say, working on something right now, can we book 1 o'clock? And in the customer's mind, that's amazing. They responded instantly. The customer's happy. You really haven't fixed the problem instantly, but the customer, they're now more relaxed, and everyone feels like they've been served, and again, you have a happy customer. It's when you leave them in the dark and just ignore them for 1 to 2 days that's what pisses the customer off.
It's all about communication. And again, talking about setting expectations. You want to communicate with your customer, and that's really going back to what you said earlier, talking about personality. You've got to have people that can deal with this, that can actually not talk down to the customer, but talk to the customer and communicate back and forth. So, and I think most of the time, as long as you're communicating, most people are fine with that. They just want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
So, Lori, from your business, now obviously you're doing a lot of, not only training, but you're out there doing the break fix stuff and all this stuff in your business. How do you handle all your, scheduling yourself and your techs and what percentage is billable for you, and what do you do if a tech's going to be late or something?
All right. Well, in terms of how many hours are billable each week, I have no idea. I haven't had the time to sit down to take a look at that, so I have no idea about that. But in terms of our schedule, I use Microsoft Outlook, and then I utilize an Exchange platform so that I can share my calendar with the people that I work with. And when I make an appointment with a client, I let them know I'm coming from another client, maybe let them know where I'm coming from, so it may take me a little longer to get there based upon traffic. So I kind of give them a range that I may be running late. And I also try to call them the day before just to remind them when our appointment is and to confirm with them what is actually wrong for their situation. Because many times I'll book an hour or an hour and a half based upon what they told me. And then when I get to a client, they then have this other list of 10 other things that are wrong. And I only planned to do 2 things, and now I'm going to be late for the next people that day. But I don't want to leave this person unfinished. So I find that sometimes difficult. So I'm usually calling the next client saying I'm running late. But I try to confirm with them. I try to confirm what we're going to do. And I usually let clients know I'm usually pretty booked the week. Like if you're calling me on a Monday, it's going to be really hard for me to service you on Monday or that Tuesday or really any time that week based upon what your needs are upon my time frames. But I use the Instant House Call a lot to try to, if it's something that I can fix remotely, I try to do that to save myself drive time. So that's something else I've been doing with my schedule.
That's a great point. Yes, what you can do remotely instead of traveling to each and every customer can save you a lot of time. Great points. Now, Dave, so I would imagine that you probably are an Outlook-ator too. So what do you use for your scheduling?
Hey, I have no problem with Outlook. We do everything via Google Calendars, and it works exceptionally well. Each of the technicians has their own calendar that they share with me with Google. I then can write things directly on their calendar, and then it syncs with their phones. And to the extent of when we put in location, I can put in the client's location. They can click on that link and get the mapping information immediately. If they need to schedule themselves for a follow-up visit or something like that, they have access to it. It works out exceptionally well. And calling, as far as calling clients, if you're running late, we just kind of have a 5-minute rule where if you're going to be 5 minutes late or early, you just contact the client. And I think one of the things that we learned that made a big difference is it sounds small, but you actually ask permission of the client. You don't say, our technician's running late, deal with it. It's more like, hey, will that still work out for you? I know that we said we'd be there at 3. It's going to be more like 3:15, 3:20. And that little extra touch, I found, makes a huge difference.
Yes.
It's like when someone says, may I put you on hold, please? And they actually wait for you to say yes instead of immediately going ahead and putting you on hold.
Right.
And it's those little touches that really, I think, help. And then we use a third-party service, like Lori had said. You remind the client of their appointment. So we have a third-party service that sends an email reminder, because I think the most important thing we find is we need to make sure the address is correct. People are saying things over the cell phone, and you get something slightly wrong, and then you go to the wrong place. Or if they have an appointment at our office, they say, oh, well, I'll just Google your office, and Google has us at 2 different locations. So they go to the wrong location, or they can't find it.
Right. That's a good point. Now, as far as like travel time, now when do you charge? Do you start charging from the point of leaving the office, or do you charge actually just on site?
We have zones.
Okay.
So it's not always based on location. There's a few customers that will say, for example, an on-site visit in Lawrence is $10. Every once in a while, someone will say, wait a minute, I'm a block away from your office. Why are you going to charge me $10 to go out there? I say, okay, we'll make a deal. I will charge you the travel time, and in that case, if we're at the office, that's fine. But if we're in Topeka, which is 40 minutes away, we'll bill you for that time. What do you prefer to do? And they're always like, it's at consistent zones, and it's not necessarily based exclusively on distance from our office, because there's like 2 metropolitan areas, Kansas City and Topeka, and we'll charge the same travel, $15 travel to go out there, even though Topeka is much closer than, let's say, Kansas City, because that's figuring out the travel time and who else can we visit out there.
Okay, so those are great tips on what to do. I'm a hybrid. I love Outlook for email, but I use Google Calendar for everything else because it syncs with my ticketing system and also syncs with my phone, and it's just easy. Plus, I can usually send out emails and stuff from there, so that works. Now, one last thing, and I want to deal with this really quickly, and the only reason I'm bringing this up is because this is one of my pain points, is that, and Sean, you might be able to answer this, is you've probably got the most, whatever. Anyways, documenting your process. How do you document your process so that you can pass that information down to the people that you're working with?
I think Sean's working on his headset there.
Oh, he's still working on his headset. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. We're looking at a project or a product to get that out of the ticket notes right now. That's one of the things that we're guilty of, is that too much information about problems gets trapped inside a ticket. So one of the things that we're doing is everything about a customer goes into a documenting solution, so that it's a lot easier to now search. We've been, I guess, getting that up and running for about 3 months now. The idea is if it's easy for someone to search the customer, the problem, then it's quicker for them to get that information. Up and it's quicker for them to help the customer when it happens again. Because chances are in our world, the same problem's going to happen again. So if you can make it easy for a technician to find it, so we're moving towards a true document management solution for this. But right now it's search through the PSA, scroll through the ticket if the customer's calling back in for the same issue. We're guilty of not the best documentation right now.
Okay, that's fair enough. Lori, we were kind of talking about, and that's great for documentation of the customer. Lori, you said you've got some experience with documenting your processes for the people that you're working with. And what do you use to do that?
Well, it's a couple of different levels. So the first level that I like is when I'm at a client, I like typing out my notes either in an email message that I can email to myself. So that way, if I need to find something, I can easily find it in my email, whether I have internet access or not, and I know that it's up to date. And then I can also forward those notes that I've taken on to other techs if they're going to that client, if it's like a follow-up in a week or two. We then take those notes and we put them into our accounting system. So I use QuickBooks for my accounting, and I take all those notes and I put them into QuickBooks so that if a client calls 3 months later to say, hey, what you did 3 months ago isn't working, I can quickly look it up, and whether it's from me or one of my techs who also took a lot of notes on what we did that day, I can easily find it and they can easily find it. If we're doing documentation where we've done a network diagram and we have directions on how to use and set up their specific programs, I like to use Dropbox for that. And I have an account and shared folders, and we put all that different documentation then in those folders for the client.
Excellent. And Dave, what types of things do you use in your business?
Well, when we're on site with a client, we take all of our notes by hand. I think the reason is that way we can focus a little bit more. When you're typing, you're not looking at the client. You can have more of an interaction when you're writing things down. Those tickets are then immediately scanned when they get back to the office, and each client has like Lori has, each client has a Dropbox folder. And since Dropbox can be accessed on the phone, the web, anywhere, anytime we go out to a client, the technician can just look in Dropbox and see all the previous written service tickets. Find people tend to write more than they will type a lot of times.
Okay. Very good. And Corey, what about you? How do you document your processes?
So on my end, I've got a wiki that I use, which is very, very useful because it means I don't have to keep it up to date myself. So I use Confluence for that. And in terms of bug reports, feature requests, issue tracking, I use Jira. I genuinely believe that with Jira and Subversion, I can control the entire world. Those two things are like my favorite things on earth. So those sort of fold back into the processes. So the developers will go in every single day and they'll look at the issues that are outstanding and the priorities, because the reality is my team isn't big enough to. I've got 2 developers, so it's not big enough that I can have someone who's handling just the bugs and just the feature requests. So they'll go through each day and see sort of what the priorities are, and then build it out from there.
Excellent. And for myself, I actually use Repair Shopper for the ticketing system, and what I like about that is every time I do something to a customer's computer, I can jot it down, send them an email, let them kind of know where they're at. I do a lot of in-office repairs for my clients, and then as far as if I come up across something that has been a problem and I was actually able to find the solution, or I figured out the solution, what I will do is I will keep that in OneNote, and I actually have a whole OneNote category of fixes that I've done, so that if I ever have that problem again, or somebody, a lot of times I don't have the problem but somebody else will, and I can pass that information along. So that kind of helps in our business. We have a great panel joining us today. We have Laura Tishney from Computer Concepts USA, Sean Jennings from CIM Solutions, Dave Greenbaum from Dr. Dave Computer Repair, and Corey Fruitman from Instant Housecall. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break while you guys click on the segue tab on the left of the main video. We'll see you in 5 minutes for AMAs. And once you get done with that video, if you want to watch some of the videos that Corey's put together on the YouTube channel, go ahead and check that out also. And we'll be back in about 5 minutes. All right,